So what are some of the questions that might arise about this topic? First of all, as we do this little Q&A about this topic, if you haven't seen the other video which introduces the topic and gives a biblical foundation for the suggestion or the recommendation, click in the description and you'll be able to see that video. So what is the recommendation that I'm suggesting? I'm calling on the desegregation of conferences in the North American division accomplished by state conferences choosing to be absorbed into the already existing regional conferences. So I've created a hypothetical list of questions in order to answer those questions that may come up. And this isn't to answer all questions. It's definitely not a detailed plan. If there was enough movement behind this, we would work on a detailed plan. But these questions are more along the lines of just answering maybe the most initial, straightforward, big questions. So the first question I think that would arise is, won't people lose their jobs? The answer is no. Every office position that will disappear as a result of a merge will offer the opportunity for more field workers without increasing the budget of any conference. There will be more pastors available for churches. There will be more conference evangelists. Even positions like communication director will find opportunity to work in the field. Imagine how much a church or a district would love to have their very own communication director or team, and how valuable this could be if a few teams moved into different fields. All of this would be accomplished by reducing redundancy and putting more employees into the local fields. Is there enough staff and admin in the regional conferences to handle the influx of churches and members? The initial answer is probably not. There would need to be some additions of personnel from the state conferences to oversee the enormous increase in members and assets. And this would include of all different cultures and ethnicities. We would need to make some additions to administration. But all of the regional conference administration could stay put in their positions, and the additions would come in underneath or alongside. Can the regional conferences handle a move like that? They're already functioning in union-sized territories, and they've been doing so for years. There would need to be some structural changes of the conference offices to assure that no one is overlooked or overworked, and the positions, but they have already demonstrated, these regional conferences, for the last 70 plus years that larger territories are functional. I think it's 70 plus years. Consider the move toward using digital tools such as Zoom and Facebook for long-distance communication. There's no reason why we couldn't slim down the duplication of positions and systems that already exist and cover a larger area with less administration. We couldn't get rid of every state conference, okay? It's important to recognize that because of some of the sizes of some of the conferences, such as, Florida conference is a really large conference. It's bursting at the seams already. There's some other situations, unique situations that would need to be maintained. We'd also need to establish regional conferences in the Pacific Union, in the North Pacific Union. And the SDA Church in Canada quite possibly might remain like it is. It's a massive territory, but there's some of the thoughts in those specific situations or unique situations, we call them edge cases, would need to be determined. In most of the cases, the majority of cases, the move to downsize administration by state conferences being absorbed into regional conferences makes a lot of sense. What do you mean by eliminating duplication? What do I mean by that? All of the conferences have the same positions. For example, there's men's ministries leader in every conference. There's evangelism coordinator in every conference. There's youth director in every conference. These roles exist in union offices and then again at the division offices. In the world that we live in today, we don't need the number of people functioning in these departments that we have. By state conferences being absorbed into regional conferences, the duplication of these roles would constrict from 5 to 8 people serving across these areas, across a union, holding a job title, to down to 1 to 2 people in those areas, and the rest could, move out into the field. They wouldn't lose their job. You would have a team of 1 to 2 that would remain in the new conference area, in the new conference office, and the rest could work in the field, supplying more pastors to the field, or more evangelists in all of these needed areas and capacities. The duplication at the union offices would also be unnecessary if the regional conferences already function as a large territory. Maybe there's only a couple regional conferences in a union, and in this case, if you only had a much smaller number of conferences, they could probably work directly under a division level in that instance. So the union positions would be eliminated, the duplication in the union positions would be eliminated, and people who filled these roles would be offered the same option as the state conference workers. I want to repeat so it's very clear, nobody would lose their employment. They would be reassigned to the front lines where we need more workers. Unions are the power blocks of our church, so we definitely don't want to eliminate unions. We want to provide, because they actually provide a cushion between the local church and the general conference or higher administration, which is a good thing that our church worked into existence. But there's certainly no longer a need for all of the duplication of positions. And I don't want you to feel bad if you fill one of these positions. That doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with you as a person or even your job function or your abilities. Your talents are needed in God's kingdom, but we need to restructure and put your talents to work in other areas than where they are currently at. So the unions could be slimmed down, and the conferences would be the focus of serving larger territories, and they could replace most of the union functionality. But things like union officers and certain individuals at the union level would need to remain. The division directors would be the coordinators, and I say this is another change that needs to take place. The coordinators, they would be coordinators, not resource producers. The coordinators of all the regional conference positions. And they would help to acquire and discover resources from the field and distribute them across conferences. So they would actually be the ones that would coordinate across the entire North American division. Resources that are being created in the field, and as they're created from the field or from conference offices, they would share them across all of the conferences in the North American division. They wouldn't need to be creators of resources. They would be distributors of resources, coordinators of the field, the local access point, if you will, for resources. So people could come to the division and know that here's the resources that is available to everyone in the field. And there would be a pool of all the different resources in the field. Shouldn't we just create something completely new? On the note of efficiency and utility, I think it would probably be harder to create something completely new than it would be to alter what we already have. And I really believe that to be true. I may be right, I may be wrong, but that's what I believe to be true. With that in mind, I would say the obligation is on us as the majority culture, again, in America, the majority culture in the US and in Canada, the majority culture, to fix and repair the breach. What is that breach? Well, it's a breach of trust. It is primarily white people in America that have neglected and betrayed the trust of our brothers and sisters of color. The burden lies on us to demonstrate the character of Christ, to show that we can be trusted. Not only would this move make more sense to adjust a functioning system, the regional conferences that are better suited to be regionally effective rather than the state conferences, which are smaller and really create a lot of problems with trying to get any regional conference to be a part of the state conference. But this also has theological precedence. Christ knelt down and washed his disciples' feet and then commanded, he said, now you wash each other's feet. Wash your brother's feet. This was his model to overcome human power struggles. And again, I believe that the burden relies on us to kneel at the feet of our brothers and sisters. What about other cultures and ethnicities that may not be immediately addressed in this? Well, there are obviously other cultures and ethnicities involved in the North American division. We would clearly need to set up certain administrative features that meet the needs of our diverse church in the North American division. This model sets the stage, this model that I'm presenting sets the stage to begin to walk toward equality. If we could demonstrate through our actions that Black lives matter, then obviously our church members would begin to see that all lives matter. But first we must show that Black lives matter. At least that's what I see, and that would be the trajectory that I would submit. How would this affect local congregations? This wouldn't affect local congregations in any major way. They would simply exist under a regional conference rather than a state conference. Some conferences have already merged in a similar way in the past. For example, Rocky Mountain Conference used to be Colorado Conference and Wyoming Conference, and they merged and became the Rocky Mountain Conference. This is an example of two state conferences that merge into one conference successfully. The impact upon a local congregation, pretty insignificant. It was pretty insignificant. And in this situation as well, it would not be a high impact on local congregations. Who would be most impacted? The people that would be most impacted are those in the conference offices and in the union offices, the people that have positions that would be eliminated. They would experience the greatest impact. Being asked to transition job roles and functions and most likely move your family to a new location, that's a really big ask. And they actually have a lot of skin in the game in actually pushing this idea forward and making it happen. So it would really take a lot of self-sacrifice on their part to set aside the stability that they might have and say instead, yeah, I'm willing to relocate. But this is where the question of the heart comes in. Self-preservation or self-sacrifice. And I'm not saying this to question anybody's loyalty to Christ, but we have to do something in the world that we live in. We have too many problems within our system, and we clearly have some racial divides that exist within our system that we need to overcome. And it's going to take self-sacrifice on someone's behalf in order to overcome those issues that we have in our church. Let's be like Jesus, and let's not be so in love with what we have that we're not willing, or even fear could drive us from being willing to do the things that need to be done. No judgment upon anyone here. I'm just expressing to you the reality of the situation. Anyone willing to make such a sacrifice for the progress of the church should be greatly heralded. What would happen with the two different retirement plans? Most of you probably don't know that there are two different retirement plans. There's, and this is one of the largest hurdles that a merge would face. There's numerous options to meet this hurdle, though. It would be worked out in discussions, obviously. Essentially, you have a defined benefits plan in the regional conferences, and then you'd have a defined contributions plan in the rest of the division. And there are definitely, again, solutions. One such solution could be to determine which plan will be used going forward, and anyone who wants to keep their current plan could. All new hires would be offered the new plan. What would need to happen to accomplish something like this? Well, there's quite a bit, actually. First of all, every state conference and regional conference administration would need to support this move. Then the constituency would need to vote. A plan would need to be created, but the constituency would need to vote for the approval of any plan that is put forward. Most likely, this would be preceded by town halls and member discussion, member feedback. I think it would be, this is just my personal opinion, I think it would be foolish to invest years of research into whether or not this would be a good move. I believe that Jesus will bless his church working together intelligently. Then the lawyers would need to formalize all the details, and finally a 3 to 5 year plan would be implemented across the merging and installments. That was a pretty simplified outline of steps. The details would get quite a bit more tricky, but this at least gives you an idea of how it could work. And I also believe that if God is with us, then we could actually do this perhaps quicker than that if we really wanted to, if we were really willing to. So what is the biggest hurdle? Well, the human heart is the biggest hurdle. We are born with a solitary focus on self-preservation. What would be best for me? What would be best for my family? What would be best for my future, my happiness, my identity, my legacy? This is what drives us to do a lot of what we do in life. The biggest hurdle to success of this plan or any other similar plans that come our way is self-preservation. Primarily men who wouldn't want to lose their jobs, their income, their status, or their identity. Perhaps they fear the idea of stepping down from an office into a pastoral role. Perhaps they've worked hard to get where they are. These are insurmountable hurdles for anyone but God. Honestly, I believe that God won't force anyone to do anything. He will eventually move on to a group that will fulfill his calling. And so in that, I think that we most certainly should learn a lesson from the history of Israel. The second hurdle is the way people interpret the call of God. Perhaps they believe that God is calling them to perpetuate this current system and structure. It's been divinely appointed. They were called to this position that they're in, and God certainly wouldn't be calling them to lay it down. First of all, I don't think that this structure is inherently divine or holy. I think that it was given for the time and that it will be in need of adjustment and tweaking, for perhaps even overhauling as long as we're progressing as humans before Jesus comes. That's what I believe. And I would ask anyone who feels that they are called to a position and that they shouldn't lay it down. Do you think that Esther had that same thought running through her mind as she approached the king of Persia? Was she willing to lay down not only her role and authority, but her life? I think each one of us should grapple with that. There's a story of a gentleman, I don't want to say his name in case I'm speaking of the wrong person, but a gentleman who every time he goes to a vote for his position in the church, he packs up his office and he carries it all out to basically make it available for whoever fills that future position. This is a mentality that I think that we all need, not only just to applaud, but to have for ourselves, that God, I'm willing to go wherever you want me to go whenever you call me. That's a hard mentality to have, but that's the mentality that Jesus talks about in John chapter 3. These people who are born of the Spirit, they're like the wind. You don't know where they're coming or where they're going. They just move as the Spirit calls them. I'm praying that God doesn't move on to another group that is willing to move with him. I'm praying that the church wakes up and begins to move like Jesus. God bless you guys. Praying that Jesus works through us to bring about his soon coming as he has thus far. And I'm praying that we can make some adjustments that really need to be made to the structure of the church to make it ready to meet Jesus. Thank you so much, and take care.